Voluntaryist Academy is an educational platform dedicated to the principles of non-aggression, self-ownership, and the ethical philosophy of voluntarism. Here, we reject the mythology of political authority and embrace the timeless truth that all human interaction should be grounded in consent and moral integrity. Through rigorous study, in-depth courses, and accessible materials, Voluntaryist Academy equips individuals with the tools to critically examine the foundations of coercive systems and to replace them with voluntary, peaceful alternatives rooted in natural law. Whether you are new to these ideas or looking to deepen your understanding, Voluntaryist Academy provides a structured path to intellectual freedom, ethical consistency, and personal sovereignty. Welcome. Explore the curriculum, challenge false assumptions, learn to live free. It's Saturday night. We're streaming live. My website is voluntaristacademy.com. My name is James Cordner. We're going to jump right into it. Tonight, we are going to be reading An Agorist Primer, Counter-Economics, Total Freedom, and You by Samuel Edward Konkin III. The preface, ideas evolve and grow. At some point, an idea connects with so many other concepts that it becomes central to a way of thinking. An ideology. At some state of an ideology's life, between its birth and death, it reaches a level of maturity such that someone is motivated to divert his efforts from expanding it outward and upward, and begins to look downward. That is, the theoretician pauses to pass on the knowledge to those not specializing in theoretical development. Perhaps the theoretician is reminded for whom he developed the ideology in the first place. Agorism is a way of thinking about the world around you, a method of understanding why things work the way they do, how they do, and how they can be dealt with, how you can deal with them. Agorism was meant to improve the lot of everyone, not a chosen elite or unwashed underclass. Hence, an introductory work that presents ideas without going through the long intellectual history and conflict of competing ideas that produced them. As the creator of agorism, it is most incumbent on me first to attempt to reduce it to basic intelligibility. I hope my efforts find some small reward. From Samuel Edward Konkin III. Introduction. Agorism can be defined simply. It is thought and action consistent with freedom. The moment one deals with thinking, acting, consistency, and especially freedom, things get more and more complex. Hold on to the virtue of consistency. The refusal to compromise, to deceive oneself, to sell out, or to be realistic created agorism. Consider being realistic. This usually implies that theory is fine for thinking, but in practice one must deal with reality. Agorists believe that any theory which does not describe reality is either useless or a deliberate attempt by intellectuals to defraud non-specialists. When someone urges you to be realistic, may you pick an agorist book to get the best description you can find on how agorism actually works. If you want to find books and articles that will fake reality for wishes, whims, fears, and spite, look for labels such as liberal, conservative, socialist, communist, fascist, or, worst of all, middle of the road and moderate. Reality knows no moderation. It is all the way. One way of thinking came close to agorism and is fairly well known today. We will deal with libertarianism later in some detail. An ideology of liberty, It had to choose at one point between consistency with reality and being the politics of liberty. It chose the latter, the contradiction of seeking political power over others to eliminate political power over others. Those who continued to seek liberty consistently and without the practical contradiction of libertarians became agorists. This is a second historical definition for you. Agorism is an ideology then, but it is also a scientific and definitely materialist way of thinking. It is not a religious view, save that it believes absolute freedom to be moral, nor does it wish to displace anyone's religious views unless they lead to slavery. Agorism wants no quote-unquote true believers in the sense of blind followers. Like any scientifically based mode of thought, it will evolve as does our understanding of reality. One who has faith in something proven false that was once a tenet of agorism is not an agorist. Reality is our standard. Nature is our lawgiver. In a general sense, agorism is scientific in that it bases itself on verifiable observations about reality. But it is scientific in a specific sense as well. It may be hard for chemists, physicists, and engineers to believe that a hard science was ever developed in fields such as economics and political science. But the discovery of this science by me, a hard-bitten theoretical chemist, cynical of quote-unquote soft science, led eventually through libertarianism to agorism. The study of human action, praxeology, produced some repeatable observations deserving the title of scientific law. The area of human action dealing with exchanges between acting humans, known as catalactics, covers the same area of thought that economics is supposed to cover, but often with very different conclusions. This kind of economics, sometimes called Austrian economics, was used by speculators such as Harry Brown and Doug Casey for investing in hard money instruments, beating taxes, and surviving when society around them is operating on unreason and folly. It is that potent, a tool for survival amidst gloom and doom. However, it can be more. By applying this economic understanding to all human action, regardless of the wishes, whims, fears, and spite of the most powerful agency in society, the state, which is coercive government, a new field of theory dealing only with practical action emerges: counter-economics. Finally, when libertarian theory meets counter-economics, what comes out, in strict consistency, both external and internal, is agorism. This is still another definition. And this is the definition with which I feel most comfortable, the one that the thieves of the intellect find hardest to pervert or steal. Agorism is the consistent integration of libertarian theory with counter-economic practice. An agorist is one who acts consistently for freedom and in freedom. A basic understanding of agorism falls naturally into 4 phases of integration or 4 steps of learning. In addition to grasping the premises involved, one should be able to apply them. Remember always that agorism integrates theory and practice. Theory without practice is game playing, taken seriously. It leads to withdrawal from reality, mysticism, and insanity. Practice without theory is robotic. Taken seriously, it leads to tilling barren soil and showing up for work at closed factories. Perhaps It would help to think of theory as wedded to practice, where divorce leads to ruin. Or the relationship could be viewed as that between brain and stomach or mind and body. Neither can survive without the other. So 4 concepts and 4 applications lead naturally to 8 chapters. The author and publisher welcome your questions because they will indicate where we can clarify and improve subsequent editions. Chapter 1. Economics. Economics is a dismal science. Those understanding certain economic concepts profit flamboyantly. Economics is a tool corporations and governments use to control society. Those understanding economic concepts have toppled governments that refuse to face the very same concepts. Economics is a meaningless college exercise. Speculators understanding economics make millions of dollars and save others from financial ruin. Here is our problem. All the above statements are true. If that makes you think there's an inconsistency in the use of economics, you are correct. With a lowercase e, economics is the study of relations between people involving goods and services. With a capital E, economics is an institution financed mostly by government and its tax-privileged foundations. With foundation money, this institution controls, however imperfectly, those who would learn and teach economics at government schools or private colleges. Maybe this appears to be a big deal made out of little. After all, is not most of chemistry and astronomy and mathematics also institutionalized? Imagine the case where only pro-government chemistry or conservative astronomy or socialist biology was taught, and those who tried to teach straight science were vilified as crackpots. Fantastic? Lysenko's pseudo-biology was taught in the Soviet Union because it was more in line with Marxist theory than was straight genetics. Currently, man-made global warming is approaching the status of state-approved climatology, with dissenters shouted down, defunded, smeared as apologists for polluters, and even threatened with the rescission of their academic degrees. Perhaps you will grant the government that government can use its control of schools and colleges to teach a twisted version of economics. Could, then, better economics be taught if government were improved? The answer is not a chance. As you will see in Chapter 6, if people understood economics, coercive government could not survive. And uncoercive government is a contradiction in terms. What we wish to accomplish in this chapter is simply to give you a basic understanding of real economics. No, this is not just to help explain the rest of this book. With even an elementary understanding of economics, fewer con games can defraud you, especially the high-stakes political kind. Let us start with why people act economically. Value. Right down there at the very bottom, we begin. Human beings act. Why? Ludwig von Mises said it best: to remove felt unease. If you were perfectly content, nothing and no one nagging at you, and you knew that if you did nothing, you could continue to be content, would you move? Remember, moving from this state would increase unhappiness. Of course you wouldn't move. Even if you said you would move to relieve boredom, you would be violating the hypothesis. you would be more bored by moving, since that is an increase in unhappiness. Aha! Is that not a contradiction? You rightfully ask. Correct. And if an assumption leads to a contradiction, it is wrong. Our assumption was that you could achieve a state of ease. Therefore, such a human condition is impossible. In reality, man always has reason to feel unease, to feed himself, clothe himself, shelter himself, reproduce, and feed, shelter, and clothe others, amuse himself, and so on. Unease cannot be eliminated. It can, however, be reduced. It can also, unfortunately, be augmented. If you seek to starve yourself or bore yourself, you increase your unease. Some actions you perform achieve negative goals. Some achieve positive ones. Those which remove felt unease are values. If someone else has something that will remove your unease but taking it will increase theirs, we have a conflict in values. This conflict in values need not arise from direct confrontation. Suppose you and another are offered a scrumptious dessert, and the other is dieting desperately. You value it, the other disvalues it. Value is subjective. This simple insight, made by Carl Menger, teacher of von Mises, revolutionized primitive economics and cured many of the problems plaguing the science since Adam Smith. Had Marx heeded Menger, socialism would have been abandoned. Subjective value leads to individualism. It also explains so powerfully why people trade, and it demolishes theories of exploitation. Before subjective value, Marx could look at the work of Adam Smith, who thought value arose from the amount of labor one put into producing something, and see no productive role for anyone but laborers, concluding that all the others must be parasites. There are parasites in our system, economics tells us, and we shall use our new understanding to ferret them out in the next chapter. Finally, when people trade, they are acting to remove felt unease in both directions. You may give up a smaller value for a larger, but never the other way around, voluntarily. If you're willing to let your brother work for you and pay him more than he's worth, you know that this means to you, he's worth extra because he's my brother. You've still gained a greater value. If values were not subjective, why would anyone trade? We would all value things equally and be content with what we had. Well, not entirely. We could also want more of a value. Onward, then, to the next powerful economic concept, which is marginal utility. Suppose you, being a shepherd, had 10 sheep, and a nice woolen coat you laboriously made from your 11th sheep. If someone came along and offered you a coat just like it for your 10th sheep, you'd tell them to buzz off. Along comes a rich shepherd and sees your coat. You tell him how you got it and even tell him how to make one. He can think of better things to do than to make a coat, but he'd like to have one. He'll trade you a sheep for a coat. No better off subjectively, you refuse. He offers you 2, and you know you'd be ahead. You can make another coat and have 11 sheep again. Meanwhile, the rich shepherd would rather have 98 sheep and a coat than 100 sheep and no coat. But this example so far is still one of subjective value. His final offer is 3 sheep. Joyfully, you accept. As you are leaving, you run into another poor shepherd with 10 sheep and a coat. There seems to be a lot of this going on. He offers you he offers you coat for sheep and is willing to accept 2 sheep. You're still ahead, 11 sheep and the coat, and you don't have to make it yourself. Such a deal. Using the wool coat as our medium of exchange, we find out something interesting. Sheep are sheep, as far as this example is concerned. Yet, while you traded your 11th sheep for a coat and would not have traded your 10th, you did trade both your 12th and 13th sheep for a coat. This principle where you value each additional unit less and less is called marginal utility. You are operating at the margin, and quote-unquote utility is an older word for value. All sheep and dollars are not alike. Marginal ones are marginal ones are cheaper. Besides giving us an idea which can handle more in economics and also help us to spot frauds such as tax redistribution, see next chapter, marginal utility leads directly to the next concept, which is division of labor. Subjective value may lead us to think we would prefer producing some goods rather than others, or transporting them, trading them, serving them, or storing them. Yet it is marginal utility which tells us why this specialization works. If I produce 10 cooked hamburgers in 1 hour, and you produce 12, and we happen to eat the same, it is obvious who has more surplus to trade and will be eager to do so. I should check out other lines of productivity or move to a less desirable, at least to you, location where I can compete. This process, where we are led to specialize by greater productivity and greater reward, which is value seeking, is called division of labor. Von Mises speculated that it was the glue holding society together. And if you think of society as bigger than a nuclear or extended family, he is right. If Jane sings beautifully and we do not, division of labor is why I'm writing this book, eating your hamburgers, and we are listening to Jane on the radio. Next is basics. With such basic ideas as those about trade, exchange, goods and services that you hopefully already brought with you to this discussion, added on to the concepts of subjective value, marginal utility, and division of labor, you are properly armed for understanding agorism. There is far more to economics and still more being discovered and written about by the all too few right kind of economists. Before we move on, there is one economic speciality that deserves some extra attention. Since it is much on everyone's minds, you probably guessed that it is money. Money is heavily mystified, and it's not hard to see why. Quote, "A fool and his money are soon parted," end quote, is a truism nearly as old as money itself. If you can be confused as to what money is or how it works, you can be parted from it by those who know what money is. Remember our sheep example? We called the wool coat a medium of exchange to show the different values of a sheep. But if we had many wool coats and one sheep being traded back and forth, we could use the same example to show the marginal utility of the 11th coat, or whatever number happened to work, and the use of sheep as a medium of exchange. Straight trade of goods for goods, barter, is crude, and problems related to making changes are difficult to solve. Sheep die and wool coats wear out. They do not store value well, and since value is subjective, changes in your needs, tastes, and circumstances alter your values anyway. Nothing can store a changing quantity, or as math majors would say, fix a variable. What we would like is something that makes change, stores its value, and is universally acceptable, meaning everyone wants it all the time. To be blunt, there is no such thing and never will be, though all bank directors, congressmen, and commissars might decree otherwise. Subjective value assures us of that. But suppose some substance could be divided down to its atoms without changing, be more resistant to wear and corrosion than almost anything else, be easily recognized and easily checked as to purity, and be valued already by a lot of people for its usefulness and good looks. Suppose further that it did it better than anything else offered in competition. Would not most people flock to it and make it money? No laws would need to be passed, or institutions founded, or advertising campaigns conducted to make it so. Nature would take care of it. Second, third, and fourth choices might be used, but the first would be the standard by which the others were measured. Such a substance has been known for millennia. Gold, and its close chemical relatives platinum, silver, and copper, remains the choice of a free market. Even in an unfree market, where money is imposed by force against the will of traders, that is, by fiat, gold remains the money of the underground economy and of the overseas economy working around the fiat money. Why fiat money exists at all and what it has to do with inflation is an important topic in our next chapter. Value-free economics. So far, we have avoided loaded terms such as free market, competitive economy, free trade, fair trade, and so on. The Austrian economists Menger, von Mises, Eugen von Bohmberg, and I don't know how to say that guy's name, but that's all right. And their students believed economics should be a science free of such terms, a value-free or value-free science, or wertfreie. I think that's German for value-free. Science has values. Try to engage in research without a commitment to truth or an affinity for reality. Many people hold values that are impossible to achieve in reality and are frustrated. They hurt themselves. Many people seek to gain values by misrepresenting reality to others. When they are challenged, they accuse the exposers of holding different, competing values. Thus, value-free scientists, including economists, find they cannot remain forever neutral in their ivory towers. To the extent, though, that they try by keeping their own subjective values out of the way, they do accomplish much. The scientific method works. And being able to tell people that stealing from everyone and then giving it back to them will make them less well off is useful, no matter how unpopular. This is where the application of economics enters. All right, so for the live stream, I just want to take a quick break. Okay. Thank you, Evolutionary Capitalist, for participating so greatly in the chat. I really appreciate that, man. I want to try to get to that, but I want to get through the reading first. I want to see I really want to dive into what you're saying in the chat. I appreciate your participation. Thank you so much. But first, I want to just tell everybody about voluntaryistacademy.com. That's my website. And you can go over there and catch up on past episodes of the show and much of what I've covered in the past. If you're new to this and to this program, to this channel, you can sign up to the newsletter. If anything were to happen to the YouTube channel, you're going to want to be on the newsletter, because it's going to be the best way for me to get into contact with people that like what I do and all that good stuff. Plus, you get a free PDF automatically sent to your inbox when you sign up. It's of Auburn Herbert's The Voluntaryist Creed. It's very, I think, important work, and Auburn Herbert is pretty much known as the guy who coined the term voluntarism. And I've read a little bit of his work on the channel in the past, but you get a PDF, and I'm working on getting everything in order to send out the slides from the End of All Evil presentation series, where you can have those and go through them and share them around and do whatever you want with them. But it'll be in the newsletter. You get to catch up. I send out like some memes. I give you some intel on what's going on behind the scenes here at Voluntarist Academy at Three Paths Studios. Three Paths Studios. It's only one studio, so it's Three Paths Studio. Anyways, that's what I like to call my little area here in the house. So if you sign up to the newsletter, it's fun. It's a fun way to stay in touch with me, and you can get all sorts of goodies in there, memes and news articles and everything like that I'm trying to what I'm reading throughout the week. I like to share with you guys, but I can't do that during my live streams here, so I do that over there. You can become a sponsor if you want to help keep this project going and growing. There's a way for you to do that. You can become a sponsor, and you can do that. I would greatly appreciate it. But really, if you really wanted to support this, you just do all the algorithm things, like liking the video and comment on the video, and and say hello, and share the video around and get more eyes on it, because it's really the material that matters here. It's the stuff that I'm covering that matters here, and I'll figure out the monetary stuff when I have to. It's really, but I would greatly appreciate anything. And when if you become a sponsor, you get an invite to a Discord channel. And in that Discord channel, there's I'm setting up private meetings where you can come and hang out with me, and we can, talk about what's going on in your corner of the world and some solutions to things, and, nothing crazy, but, and then, who knows what else, some fun stuff that can be planned. Who knows? I already mentioned the replays of past episodes, and on the website, voluntaristacademy.com, you can take home the PDF versions of what I'm covering on this channel, much of what I've covered in the past, including what's being covered now, An Agorist Primer by Samuel Edward Konkin III. If you want to take those home with you, they're there to download. You can find them on the internet, but this website's on the internet, and I'm I'm aggregating this stuff. So it's just it's a one-stop shop, basically, where you can download them from me. And if you don't like the idea of becoming a monthly sponsor, you can just come over and throw some cryptocurrency my way, or make a direct donation to the PayPal, or buy me a coffee or whatever. And, I greatly appreciate that. You can follow me on social media, on Facebook, on Instagram, and on X, and, all that great stuff. And that's all good. And so, you don't have to be a voluntarist to enjoy this show, or to tune in and hear me make mistakes on pronouncing people's names, or some, make mistakes in the readings or whatever, but we can all learn a lot from each other. And, so I think that's pretty cool. This show is for everybody. You don't have to be a voluntarist to be here. So I'm teaching about voluntarist concepts, and I think we all can learn a lot from each other. But it is it is very important to me that I try to teach people about this stuff and preserve freedom for further generations, for future generations, and to do my best to put a good message of freedom and prosperity out there. But cool, man. All right. That's about it for that part. Let's get back into the reading for tonight. Chapter 2, Applied Economics. Agorism is more than economics, but agorist thinking is impossible without that basic understanding. Just applying the basic economics we have learned so far can sweep away a lot of misconceptions and eliminate a lot of confusion about how the world works. We also can deal with some of the misleading con jobs of economics. However, explaining why economics is so twisted will have to wait until we apply libertarianism later. Let's talk about it. The free market. Agorism upholds the free market. To understand why, one first needs to know what the free market is and what its alternatives are. Again, why is left for later. The term agorism is derived from the ancient Greek word agora, meaning an open marketplace. The market is not a single place or center. Goods and services are exchanged at the corner store, on the stock exchange, at a swap meet, in your backyard, or across the internet. Playing a game with a friend is not a market transaction, but foregoing the time that each of you could spend on working or buying or selling is a market transaction. All social interaction has a market component. Economics may be far more pervasive than we thought. It is difficult to imagine how we could have a free society, should we wish it, without a free market. Perhaps we should be clear with reference to what we mean by free. Free means the absence of coercion. Coercion is threatening violence upon someone in order to make him surrender something. In a strictly value-free sense, then, coercive human action offers to create a greater disvalue to you if you do not yield up your lesser value. You gain nothing, but lose less. Repeated application of coercion destroys values. The coercer gains without producing anything of value, and the victim always loses. Voluntary exchange, as we have seen, occurs when both feel a gain of subjective value. Unease is relieved in both directions. In coercive transaction, unease is increased. Retrieving your goods from the coercer with the threat of greater force and enough extra for your time and trouble at least wipes out your loss, although it leaves the original coercer with a net loss. At this point, he may finally become aware of the value destruction of coercion, or he may simply decide he needs still greater force. The biggest force of all in an area is usually the state, but we'll come to that later. Strictly speaking, the free market is the absence of all that coercion. If there were only a few private thieves, and they were usually apprehended and forced to make restitution, something very, very close to a free market would exist. People would have locks, fences, alarms, and insurance policies and protection agent policies, but would act otherwise on the assumption that they were free to give up their property to those of their choice and to accept from others who gave freely to them. They could not plan on people exchanging their minds, but they could make contracts, exchanging a good here and now for one to be given later, so that if others changed their minds, some compensation would result. Planning and chaos. It quickly becomes clear that planning is far more practical in a free market than in a coerced market. If coercion becomes regular and predictable, innovative people find ways around it and soon enough join forces to evade the coercive regulations, frustrating and or starving the coercer. See the next chapter. Tune in next week. So, new forms of coercion must be brought in, and economic planning is disrupted once again. Some argue that a free market is chaos. They see no one giving orders and so think that there is no order. In reality, a completely free market is a highly decentralized order. Each quote-unquote cog in the great machine keeps itself well-oiled and seeks to mesh itself with the other cogs in ever better fits. An even better example is the human body. While the brain has some overall direction, it cannot instruct various cells to go about their ways delivering blood and building tissue and contracting muscle and transmitting energy. A disease or parasite may direct some cells to a common task, but this results in disruption. This results in disruption of the natural order. Even without a foreign invader, if the brain could force some cells to act other than naturally, the entire body would suffer by this imposed order, and the body could die. The fallacy in planned economics is the error of assuming that order is imposed. Scientists are aware that order is something you look for in nature. It's already there. Economics tells us that attempts to impose order by coercion are destructive and chaotic. Yet economic planning of the imposing kind is common to nearly all schools of economics. We begin to see where the gap between economics and small e economics and capital E economics lies. Competition and monopoly. Competition and monopoly. It's nice if more than one person offers to trade the same thing with you. You usually can get a better deal. When more than one seller offers identical goods, and when more than one buyer offers to acquire the same goods, pure competition exists. If only one buyer or seller is available, the buyer or seller is said to have a monopoly. Competition is always good in the sense that it maximizes value exchanges. Although it would take more theory to prove this, most people have had enough experience to accept the foregoing as a factual statement. Surely not all monopoly is bad. If we banned all monopoly, then Leonardo da Vinci would have had to give up painting what only he could paint. And the Beatles would have had to stop composing what only they can compose. In fact, since a little bit of artistry distinguishes all goods, pure competition is impossible. There are no identical products. Yet, for your subjective purposes, you can see no difference worth paying for among all sorts of goods. And they do not have to be all that similar. With $15, you might decide to buy a book you wished to spend the evening with. Finding that book sold, you consider a movie instead. The lines are too long, so you buy a six-pack instead and go home. Someone else would have different goods competing for that $15, even if he had started out trying to buy that same book. If I told you at this point that some economists defined a free market as a perfectly competitive market, you might wonder when they lost their senses. After all, if people want to produce different things, remember division of labor, and are more productive doing so, You will not get perfect competition in the free market. You will have lots of competition by giving each human actor maximum freedom to explore his values and find alternatives. Now, if I tell you that these economists say that if a market is not perfectly competitive, force should be used to make it so, you probably are beginning to wonder if I have not lost my senses. Whatever these economists are after, it is not a free market, nor will they generate any gains, since values are always net destroyed by coercion. Adam Smith defined monopoly as a grant of exclusive trading by the king. It was a royal privilege, that is, the state coerced some people not to produce goods when the king's friends were already doing so. Breaking up these forced monopolies was an issue for freedom lovers, and rightfully so. The problems arose when people stopped thinking clearly or had their thoughts muddled by economists. Monopoly became bad, not because it was coercive, but because it was not competitive. Clear thinking and consistency leads us easily to realize that the opposite of forced monopoly and of forced competition is natural monopoly and free competition. The correct opposition is the coerced the correct opposition is the coerced market versus the free market. Cartels. One problem with monopoly we seemed to have overlooked. Do not the big get bigger and the small get driven out, even if the market is left alone? The answer is obvious empirically. Historically, it has never happened. There is extensive literature by the better sort of economists on many historical examples where businesses were accused of forming trusts, that is, attempting to monopolize one industry through cartels. Most cases, when state trust busters were brought in to break up a large company, proved to have been instigated by smaller companies against a more efficient competitor. Cartels, as Dr. Murray Rothbard has beautifully shown, tend to break up from market forces. The most efficient cartel members can outsell his fellow members and has a tremendous incentive to cheat on the cartel agreement. He can steal the customers from his fellow members and soon does under the table. Upon discovery, his fellow cartel members fight back by cutting prices, and the cartel disintegrates. In a coerced market, however, the cartel will run to someone to force compliance with the cartel. That someone is, in any realistic unfree market, the state. And once again, we are back to the forced or state monopoly. Profit and enterprise. Sometimes the terms free enterprise and capitalism are used to mean free market. Capitalism means the ideology or ism of capital or capitalists. Before Marx came along, the pure free marketeer, Thomas Hodgkin, had already used the term capitalism as a pejorative. Capitalists were trying to use coercion, the state, to restrict the market. Capitalism, then, does not describe a free market, but a form of statism. See Chapter 5, or tune in next week. Like communism, free enterprise can only exist in a free market and is an acceptable synonym. Yet while the term market covers all human transaction, Enterprise seems limited to certain types of business. And what about profit? Is it the result of exploitation, enterprise, hard work, or something else? Applying economic knowledge here resolves the problem clearly, but it will take a little effort to follow through. According to Austrian economics, there are 3 productive functions in the marketplace: labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. In the simplest primitive economy, capital consists of tools, food you have stored to keep you going until the harvest comes in or you can sell the shoes you made, and storefronts or wagons to take your goods to market. Labor is the work you put into farming or shoemaking or whatever. Entrepreneurship is direction, the reins of the operation, deciding where to invest the capital and which and how many workers to hire. As the market progresses to greater wealth and complexity, we can see that the important components of entrepreneurship are risk-taking and innovative. Or innovation, excuse me. Speculators, inventors, and artists without patrons are the best known, fairly pure entrepreneurs. They take risks, create a product that did not exist before, which turns out to have a demand. 2, a better product to replace one that existed before, winning away the demand. 3, a cheaper method of producing or marketing the same product, again, winning away the demand. The gain resulting from pure entrepreneurship is profit. It is not the everyday return on investment that a businessman counts over his expenses and takes home. Windfall profits occur when there is a sudden change in market conditions, such as weather wiping out crops, or producing bumper harvests, mineral and oil strikes suddenly coming onto the market, or, when the market is not free, sudden government interference in the marketplace. Those who make the most effort to anticipate the unexpected tend to make the most profits. Taking risks also means one can introduce products no one wants, invent devices that are laughed away, and create artsy trash. Such creations incur negative profit or loss, and alas, this is at least as common historically as profit. Nonetheless, without entrepreneurship, enterprise, the economy would stagnate as people continue investing the same capital in the same way, over and over, and workers continue at the same jobs. When skilled laborers begin to die out and capital runs out of components, such as minerals at mines or new forests for timber, the economy would regress and collapse. Everyone is part laborer, pan-capitalist, and part entrepreneur. But by division of labor, we tend to specialize. There is nothing to prevent us from all being wealthy, someday, at any rate, and using our money, as James Garner put it so well in the film The Wheeler Dealers, as a way of keeping score in capital investment. And capital, in the form of ever more intelligent computers, can reduce labor to a vestigial activity as necessary as the human appendix. Entrepreneurship, on the other hand, is increased, not decreased, by a progressive market. As our society becomes more complex and more wealthy, more people will specialize in entrepreneurial activity, and more people must be free to do so. Entrepreneurship cannot be forced. When bureaucrats plan, they spend their time finding ways of covering their posteriors and pass the losses on to the taxpayers. They fear replacement, and since they reap little or no reward for success, they become timid about actually taking risks and spend their time creating red tape entanglements designed to stymie innovation. Regulation. There is nothing positive to say about regulation. Regulation is coercion. It prevents subjective values from being satisfied, protecting only those who do not wish to be protected, and penalizing only the law-abiding. Regulation destroys initiative and stifles innovation. Regulation stagnates markets. Regulation can and does kill people when the regulators deny victims the right to take a chance with so-called risky medication. Regulation is motivated by fear, envy, and colossal ignorance. There is nothing that can protect innocent people more than a thorough education and a vigorous pursuit of fraud. Yet regulation of advertising and experimentation destroys information transfer, and regulation of quality merely certifies incompetent professionals and protects them from fraud charges. If all the regulation passed in any country you wish to name were completely obeyed, let alone enforced, we would all be dead. Consider a particularly pathological case in the United States of America. If you charge a price for your product higher than your competitors, this is taken as evidence under the Sherman Antitrust Act that you have a monopoly and charges may be brought against you. The same problem arises if you charge the same. That is considered evidence of a cartel, and you and your competitors can all be fined. Finally, if you charge less than your competitors, you are violating the fair trade laws in most states and can be arrested and fined. It is impossible to obey all regulations. Taxation. There is a serious moral question about taxation that we will leave for later. Let it suffice now to recognize that taxation takes something from someone against his or her will and is a violation of his or her subjective values. Any specific form of taxation directs resources counter-entrepreneurially. In short, taxation has no place in a free market. Taxation is slavery. Interest. There are three very closely related concepts in economics, and they have to do with capital, land, and money. It is often said that capital earns a rate of return on investment. Remember, only entrepreneurs make profits. Land earns rent, and money earns interest. With an efficient medium of exchange, an entrepreneur will quickly shift from capital goods of one type to another if the rate of return is higher in one sector of the market than the other. Land is a fixed form of capital, and if we were in a free market, we should expect rent to come to equal the rate of return as in other investments, assuming no risks where profit would be added or subtracted. And so it is with interest. Originary interest is what money earns if you lend it out to an entrepreneur risk-free. Should you accept risk yourself, you may add on a risk component, a form of profit. At the same level of risk, in a highly developed market, interest rates should stabilize and slowly decrease as wealth increases. Only if something becomes powerful enough or coercive enough to monopolize by force all the media of exchange or money supply, and then increase it so that the value of each unit declines, will another component appear to increase the interest rate, regardless of risk. Conceivably, it could decrease the money supply so that the value would be expected to increase and interest to be discounted. In an extreme case, this inflationary component could drive interest rates to zero or negative. That is, someone pays you to take his money and give it back to him later. Deflation is rare, and there is very little incentive for controllers of the money supply to deflate. Inflation. Understanding how inflation works and what to do about it made the fortunes of the gold bugs and investment analysts mentioned earlier. While there is considerable fog and confusion thrown around this subject, inflation is simple enough to understand if you follow our step-by-step logic and always watch for inconsistencies. From Chapter 1, we know what money is. Free market money could be affected by, say, a gold strike, or if for some reason the gold was all kept in a Fort Knox, by James Bond's Goldfinger nuking it. Even then, there would be a brief dip or jump in the price of gold. The price of money is simply the inverse of the prices of everything bought with it, and stability would resume at a new level. In a worldwide market, the effect, even of nuking Fort Knox, would be barely noticeable. Inflation is the increase of the money supply. Inflation results only when the most powerful force in society, the state, commands a monopolistic fiat money system, creates legal tender laws. Legal tender compels the monopoly. Contracts are not upheld in other tender or money. And with army and police to back it up, debases a form of money that was acceptable in the marketplace. States that have imposed fiat money from scratch, such as in newly emerging third world countries, find their money rapidly rejected in favor of foreign currency and gold. The usual route to inflation takes 4 steps. Step 1. Replacement of money by certificates for the money. A weight of gold or silver is replaced by a certificate claiming an ounce of gold or pound of silver in some precious metal warehouse or bank. Step 2. Legal definition of possession of the certificate as equivalent to possessing the wealth. The government gets into the act. Step 3. Restriction of all exchanges, save primitive bartering, to the legal certificates. This is the creation of legal tender. And step 4. Issuing certificates without money to back them up. At this point, we have fiat money and inflation. Inflation leads to crack-up booms, such as German in 1923, and depressions, like the United States in 1929. This analysis is a bit more complicated and is best left to more cataclysmic scenarios we'll present near the end of the book. Oh, and as you probably guessed, one result of inflation is a general rise in price level. Notice that some prices rise faster than others, and some even seem to drop. Only the distortion is common to all price changes. A little knowledge. If you have mastered the first 2 chapters, congratulations. You will quickly discover 2 things by simply reading your daily newspaper or news blog or shooting the breeze with your acquaintances. First, you will discover the appalling level of ignorance with which most of society is afflicted. Be careful. Some people get very irritable when challenged by someone who knows what he is talking about. A knowledgeable person might be tempted to use his knowledge to bilk the ignorant. Many people with only a little knowledge do just that. However, there are moral ways to profit by your understanding, and by all means, go to it. Second, you will discover that the appalling web of statism is controlling, or attempting to control, nearly every aspect of human action. You will probably feel smothered, and that is not surprising. You may also feel like giving up and giving in, but survival alone dictates otherwise. Survival, let alone prosperity, demands that you tear through the web of legislation and follow nature's laws instead. You must abandon capital E economics to the regulators and the political quote-unquote businessmen who play ball with them. You are left with the alternative. Stifle yourself and starve, or embrace counter-economics. Okay, so that's where we're going to leave it. That's where we're going to leave it tonight for this. All right, so hold on.